One of the weirdest parts or interesting parts, I'll let you determine whether it's weird or interesting, about being on my healing journey for, wow, 6 years now. Holy crap. Where has the time gone? Anyways, is having certain types of days and trying to think back to a time where I had a similar type of day. And it always connects to an absolutely insane story about my late narcissistic mother. So here's a little story time for you. Yesterday, for example, I was having like a really long, slow day. Like nothing particularly bad happened or anything. It just felt like time was broken. And, it was just one of those days where like I didn't really, I finished everything I had to do for my clients. I didn't have my next client for like 5 hours or something. And I was just kind of bored out of my mind. And every time I'd look at the clock, I would think it was like an hour later, but really it was only like a minute or 5 minutes if I was lucky. And so I decided to journal because guess what? Just because I've been on my healing journey for 6 years plus now, it doesn't mean I'm fully healed because there's no such thing. Healing is a lifestyle change. So I like to practice what I preach. And I guess like it's been a while since I've actually had the opportunity to be bored out of my mind for a while. So it was nice, like kind of like I was able to rest. But at that time when I started journaling, I was, a little annoyed with how slowly time was going. So I'm journaling and, I'm writing about how this has been the longest day of my life. And then, of course, because I had been gaslit for the majority of my life, I tend to fact check myself whenever I have a thought like that, when it's like an absolute, like, this is the longest day of my life. And so my brain started to kick in. Has it really been the longest day of my life? And no, I actually do remember the longest day of my life. I mean, maybe there's other ones that are like before this particular day, but we're going to start with this one. And it was in 2012. I was like 23 years old or something like that. And my now late narcissistic mother forced me to take the day off of work because she wanted me to go to court with her because she was suing these poor people who made the mistake of agreeing to paint her house. And according to my mother, they did a really bad job. And instead of cutting her losses or opening her eyes to see that it wasn't that bad. She chose a lawsuit. So I had to take the day off of work, which meant I wasn't getting paid. And it was a new job. So that obviously reflected really poorly on me at that job. Not that it matters now, but anyways, she like wanted me to testify. But first of all, I didn't care. And second of all, I was never involved in any of this to begin with. And third of all, I didn't really think she had a case. And fourth of all, I wasn't even on the list of witnesses or people who needed to testify. So it was just so ridiculous and unnecessary for me to even be there. And so from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. that day, like nothing happened. And then finally her case gets called and she didn't have a case. Like it was just so ridiculous. And, it was very quick. Like she was ordered to pay the painters their legal fees for wasting everybody's fucking time. And so once we got out of the courtroom, I asked her, can I leave now finally? Like this is over. And then she still wouldn't let me. And she forced me to stay for another hour or so while she paid the fees and whatnot. I was exhausted. I was starving. I didn't eat all day. It's now like 3:30 p.m. and I was obviously irritated as shit at this point because I was there for no reason. And my phone died because I was playing solitaire on my phone the whole day to try to pass the time. And so at this point, she's arguing with whoever on the phone about the legal fees. And, she's just like making it into a whole thing. So what do I do? In true trauma response fashion back then, I offered to pay for the legal fees so that she would just shut the fuck up and we could leave and go home because I was exhausted and I just couldn't deal with it anymore. Let's keep in mind, I'm 23. I had just graduated university a year before and she was financially abusing me the whole time, anyways. So it's not like I even had anything saved. But of course, she gladly took the money I didn't actually have and she still didn't want me to leave. And like at this point, it's around like 4:30, 5 p.m. ish. And like I don't even remember. Like this is 13 years ago. So like the memory's a little faded, but it was a long ass day from what I remember. And I finally snapped around 4:30, 5 p.m. And I told my mom, I'm leaving and I'm just going to take the subway. Like because she was my ride there, but at that point I'm out. Like I just couldn't deal with being there anymore. So I decided I'm just going to take the subway and there was nothing she could do about it. I'm an adult. I'm allowed to walk to the subway station and take the subway and then the bus home, and there is nothing you can do about it, lady. So you would think this is where my long ass day ends, but it's not. It only gets worse and even longer from here, and we're already at like we're approaching 5 p.m. at this point. So It gets worse. So I'm obviously super pissed off and I'm in my early 20s. So there's, that extra angst, that extra young adult angst there. You know what I mean? So I take the subway and I get to the first station where I would have had to transfer to the other subway line at. And in my early 20s rage, I pull open the metal door to get into the subway platform towards me with all of the strength that I had in my body, if I even had any strength at that point, with how exhausting and just ridiculous that day was. And trigger warning, if you're not into like blood and gore, you might want to not watch the rest of this video. And so the bottom part of the door goes right over my big toe. Yep, lost that nail. Ugh, thinking back to it. Horrifying. Horrifying. I instantly felt the blood in my shoe. And so at this point, I'm in so much pain. I'm in tears with how painful it was. I'm by myself. My phone is dead. I have not eaten anything all day. Luckily, I happen to still have some cash in my wallet. So I decided to take a taxi the rest of the way home because I just didn't know what else to do. And let's not forget, this is in 2012, before Uber existed, before, it was easier to navigate where you want to go if you're fucking big toenail got ripped off from a metal door at the subway station. I was too scared to look at my foot, but I could feel, it's not nice when you feel something wet in your foot, and it was obviously the blood. And I was just basically just crying the entire cab ride home. And then because my mother was still in fucking court for whatever reason, it's like 6 p.m. at this point when I get home, I had to then drive myself to the walk-in clinic. Luckily, it was my left foot, not my right foot, so I could drive. But oh my God, like imagine the excruciating pain. I had to drive myself to the walk-in clinic to get my foot looked at and also get my tetanus shot. It was so traumatic. And, once I got home, it was like, I don't know, like 9, 10 p.m. Like it was just so late. I was so tired. And yeah, moral of the story, my long ass day that I thought I had yesterday, that was a joke compared to any given day where I had to experience any extended period of time with my late narcissistic mother. I don't know how to end this, but I hope you enjoyed the story.